Thank you, Amy. This is David. For those attending this ZoomGov meeting, it's the session titled Strategy to Impact Effective Governance Best Practices. During this session, we will explore some governance best practices that support a council-led, staff-supported structure. We will also hear from some councils that are applying these best practices in their work. I'll now want to mention to you some information about our speakers. Matthew Shapiro, as a person with a disability, Matthew Shapiro has spent most of his life motivated to teach those he has met how to better understand the disability community and inclusion. This led him to create Six Wheels Consulting in December of 2014. He's a current council member and former chair of the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. Brent Watkins. Brent was named interim executive director of the Oregon Council on Developmental Disabilities in August 2024. He has been working in the developmental disabilities community for 30 years. Sierra Whiteside is the chair of the Hawaii State Council on Developmental Disabilities. Daintree Bartoldas serves as the executive administrator of the Hawaii State Council on Developmental Disabilities. She has over 2 decades of leadership in disability rights, public health, and systems transformation. Kirsten Murphy is the executive director of the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council and serves as president of the board of directors of the National Association of Councils on Developmental Disabilities. Jeremy Murphy is entering his 7th year on the Michigan Developmental Disabilities Council and his 5th serving as chair. David Duell is the current chairperson of the New York State Council on Developmental Disabilities, as well as other disability-focused boards, committees, and working groups. Thank you all for agreeing to present on this important topic. Now we'll hand it off to Matthew Shapiro. Go ahead, Michael. Matthew.
Uh, Thank you, David. Hello, everybody. Also, just want to set the stage a little bit. You may see me looking down and sort of reading my notes. That's only because there's a lot that we have to cover today, and I just want to make sure that we are hitting everything. So just bear with me in that regard. And so, again, David, thank you for that introduction. Today, we are going to highlight 10 of the best practices that support council-led and staff-supported councils. We have 3 practices around roles and authority. We have 3 practices that focus on operations. And then we have 4 practices that focus on how we do our work. So as we go through these, I just want to quickly go through the categories overall, and then we'll go into each one in more detail. So the first are around roles, and the first handful are around roles and authority, and that includes making sure that we define roles clearly, we maintain appropriate boundaries. Discussions belong to the council. That is our first set of best practices focused on roles and authority. Best practices that are around operations, that council meetings are staff prepared and governed. I'm sorry, the staff prepares the meeting and the councils govern them. Chairs lead the meeting and supports staff supports flow of the meetings, and then support information leadership as well. So again, best practices and operations. Some highlights around the work that we do and how we do our work. We want to use the partnership, not hierarchy method. We want to build member confidence. Accountability works both ways between staff and councils. And we want to practice the no surprises rule. So now that we have gone through them kind of broadly, we want to go into these sort of more granularly and specifically. So starting with defining roles clearly. Councils have responsibilities to set the vision and priorities and policy direction of a given council. They approve plans, budgets, and major decisions. They represent the community voice and major. Hold on, sorry, lost my place. They represent community voice and lived experience because they're uh, a lot of them are people with disabilities. They provide oversight and accountability. From a staff's perspective, staff provide expertise and operational support. They implement council decisions. They manage programs, contracts, and daily operations, and they prepare information and informed decision making. So as we go through each section, I'm also going to turn it over to councils around the nation to talk about different aspects of this from their perspective directly. So for this first section, defining roles clearly, I'd like to turn it over to Brent Watkins of the Oregon Council to share some of his thoughts. So Brent, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, and it's good to be with everyone today. As a brief introduction again, I'm Brent Watkins, and I'm currently the interim executive director for the Oregon Council on Developmental Disabilities. And when I joined the Oregon Council late in 2024, we decided to engage our membership in a level setting exercise by asking three questions. What should we start doing? What should we stop doing? And what should we maintain? One of the clear messages was they wanted to be more involved and more engaged in council work. In the few minutes I have today, I'm going to share a philosophy and some activities that have helped us to become more member-led and staff-supported. Um, I'm going to briefly talk about the importance of understanding power dynamics, core principles guiding our approach, and then some practical steps we have taken to provide some role clarity for our membership and our staff. This is a diagram I was introduced to years ago in work I used to do with Mike Green of the Asset-Based Community Development Institute. The picture represents different types of decision-making group dynamics. The model at the far right is what really guided our actions as we work to empower our council membership. We could probably do a full day on this diagram alone, but for the sake of time, let me just share that when professionals enter any community, it is important they understand both their real and their perceived power. And it is important to identify your community leaders and work with them to engage in the community. Professionals are involved and provide support, but they use their power to remove barriers and to support the vision of the community. Generally, the approach creates shared power, or what we would define as power with, which is a shared power that emerges from collaboration and relationships. It is based on principles of respect, mutual support, shared power, solidarity, influence, empowerment, and collaborative decision making. Unlike domination and control, power with fosters collective action and the capacity to act together. As is implied in the definition, professionals, or in our case, council staff, do not act passively, but work alongside council membership and look for ways to empower while always being aware of and sensitive to real and perceived power dynamics. Next slide. I'm sorry, Amy, could you go back to the one? There you go. Sorry. You were right on it, and didn't give you credit for that. It's also important to have clear and stated guiding principles, establishing roles and expectations for both council members and council staff. For our members, that is helping them to feel empowered so that they feel ownership over our mission, outcomes, and decisions. It is input from them and their lived experience that helps establish policies, strategies, priorities, recommendations, and decisions. There is alignment and real synergy when staff respond to member actions by doing research, providing analysis, looking at various options, understanding compliance, identifying logistics, and then executing the recommendations and decisions of the council. I mentioned earlier how important it is to engage leaders within a given community. And in our council community, that leadership is provided by our chair and our vice chair, which are here in this picture. As a staff, we make sure they have the tools to succeed. We work with them to develop agendas, support them to lead meetings, and meet regularly with them to discuss where there are opportunities for us to improve ways we engage with council members and support their work. We've tried to create a structure that puts our members in a position to set priorities and provide ongoing feedback on the work plan and create a healthy environment where we can engage in unguarded but respectful debate. This allows people to have informed votes and make recommendations, which leads to greater buy-in. Our main vehicle for this engagement is our committee work. Over the last year, we went from 2 standing committees, or what were called caucuses, to 6. Now I see 5 listed here. The budget committee, for whatever reason, I missed and put in the slide, but we have a 6, which is our budget committee, in addition to our executive committee. Each of these committees is led by a council member and supported by a council staff. The committee chair is responsible for developing agendas, developing meeting summaries, and reporting back to the full council during our all-day council meeting. The staff provide the following support: acting as a council liaison by doing public postings, web updates, stakeholder outreach, meeting recordings and transcripts, providing policy program analysis by putting together clear information for members, draft options with pros and cons, synthesizing input, and aligning recommendations to policy and strategy. Offering operations and coordination support by managing logistics, notices, packets, minutes, public comment process, and accessibility. Be the primary point of contact for communications, shepherding agendas, coordinating with the chair and vice chair, tracking the work plan, and ensuring follow-through. Finally, making sure all actions are legal and compliant with the Federal DD Act as well as state rules and policies. Just a quick shout out to our council staff. So we have Matt Sears, who is our public policy director, Hannah Baker, our advocacy and leadership coordinator, Joanne Reganathan, our communication specialist, and Kate Thompson, who is our operations administrator. So this is a small group, but they do amazing work. I mentioned in the beginning the exercise we engaged council members in when I first joined. This was some of the feedback we received. They wanted more opportunities for expanded membership engagement. They felt a lack of role clarity for those 2 caucuses. They felt staff led most of the membership decisions, that council meetings relied on a lot of staff presentations. And there was a lack of member enthusiasm for participation in council meetings. To begin the process of becoming more member-led, we took the following actions. Related to governance, we created a more robust standing committee structure from an executive committee and 2 caucuses to an executive committee and 6 standing committees. The use of ad hoc committees to obtain information staff need to support the work of the council. Structure of our council meetings with more time committed to committees to inform, gather feedback, and lead decisions. A membership process that's screened by ad hoc committee and approved by a full council, and changing the power dynamics so that there's less siloing, more decision making in the hands of the full council and not just the executive committee. There were accessibility steps we took, which included responding to feedback on practices that improved accessibility, revising content and layout of our minutes, adding preferred methods of taking votes, improving budget presentations, including adding snapshot updates so that they weren't necessarily just getting a budget form, continuous improvement of information presentations, and and we also have a contract underway to rewrite our bylaws in plain language. We took the following steps to increase trust through our communication by eliminating lengthy review of work plans during meetings and transition to updating, receiving input on selected key projects, developing community agreements to build trust and improve our culture. We have member-led community engagement events. For instance, a Spanish-speaking leaders group that is responsible or has led multiple events now. A robust council engagement, or we've had robust council engagement around our 5-year plan process, and then ongoing listening to our council members and making changes accordingly. There's still a lot of work for us to do to be member-led and staff-supported. Some of those things that we need to continue to work on include better chair-facilitated council meetings, developing committee leads to feel more empowered to initiate meetings, set agendas, hold committee members accountable, self-advocate-led decision-making within committees and in committee roles, continued progress toward council engagement and strategic oversight and evaluation assessment of council activities, and finally, awareness during hard topics, to be trauma-informed, to make sure that we implement trauma-informed communications and practices. That's my presentation. I know that we're limited on time, so if you have questions, you can put those in the chat and I'll try to respond. So thank you for the time today and being part of this discussion.
Thank you, Brent, for that wonderful insight. And so the next section that we want to start to address is maintaining appropriate boundaries between councils and staff. So for council members, they should not direct individual staff on, what they need to be doing. They should not be maintaining daily operations, and they should not interfere with supervision structures. And staff should not control council priorities, limit discussion unnecessarily, and substitute administrative preferences for council direction. So dictate that things that the staff want to do versus what the council is directing. Decisions, again, belonging to the council. Staff should present operations. They should provide data and implementation strategies, and they should recommend approaches when appropriate. And then council members should discuss these strategies and implementation instances, deliberate on them, and then vote and reach consensus on things that need to be voted on during our council meetings. To discuss how this works in practice, I'd like to ask our team from Hawaii to share how they put these practices into action during their work together. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Effective Governance Practices, Hawaii State Council on Developmental Disabilities. Aloha, my name is Sierra Haunani Whiteside. You can call me Haunani.
Hi, and I'm Daintree Bartolos, Executive Director, and I'm just Daintree. Next slide. Council-led, what makes Hawaii unique? In Hawaii, our council is truly council-led. All of our officers, including our chair, are individuals with the developmental disabilities. Our role as staff is not to make decisions, but to support the council in making informed decisions. That structure shapes everything we do, from how we run our meetings to how we take positions. Next slide.
As chair, my job is to make sure everyone has a chance to speak and be heard. We don't rush decisions. We talk things through ask questions, and make sure people understand before we vote. Everyone's voice matters.
Accessible information for all members ensures real participation. Clear roles and expectations prevent staff overreach or confusion. Oh, and Hanani, why don't you tell us what that picture is?
That is a picture of me and the governor as um, he signed the proclamation for Developmental Disability Awareness Month that we had for Day at the Capitol.
That's terrific. We're huggers, so
Yeah.
everyone, you see all the pictures, everyone hugs each other. Oh, I'm sorry. Now back to the script. Follow through on decisions builds trust and accountability. Next slide. Oh, how we structure decisions, we send out the agenda and material in advance so people can be prepared for meetings. Better decisions come from this. We structure our meetings so it's clear when a decision is being made. Each item includes time for discussion, open discussion so all voices are heard, questions and clarification is provided. We use formal motion and second. We always work toward consensus whenever possible, but there are times that we call for a vote and the majority will rule. Decisions are documented and followed up with.
Remember, a clear agenda is a must. When received before the meeting equals better decisions. Used during the meeting equals more inclusive. And after the meeting, it is used as a minute template equals accountability.
Next slide.
We make sure information is easy to understand. If something is confusing, we ask questions. No one is rushed or left out. We respect each other, even when we don't agree. Board members must wait until I call on them to speak. Be respectful. Address me, not another board member. It's okay to disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. This helps us make better decisions together.
Next slide. Role clarity. The council sets the direction, and my role is to support and implement their decisions. I serve at the pleasure of the board.
One of the most important things is role clarity. The chair leads the meeting. Council members discuss and make decisions. Staff provide background information, logistics, and follow-up, but they do not drive outcomes. That separation builds trust and strengthens leadership.
Next slide. A quick example of this is the discussion we had on our Medicaid policy, how a person cannot save over $2,000 or they'll lose their Medicaid. We worked hard to get Hawaii Able Savings Program implemented. The council asked questions about how working would impact benefits and independence.
When we talked about this, people shared their real life experiences. Some were afraid to work because they might lose services. We asked questions and made sure we understood. Then we made the decision together.
The council agreed to work on Cowles Law and earned income disregard. As a follow-up, staff worked with Department of Human Services to implement and expand our full income asset disregard. That decision came from the council, not the staff.
When you stop doing things for us and begin doing things with us, it has a greater impact.
Next slide.
When the council makes the decision, it feels real. We're not just listening, we are leading. That makes our work stronger and more meaningful.
Next slide. Key takeaways. Effective governance is not about control, it's about trust, building that trust. When councils are empowered to lead and staff are committed to supporting rather than directing, you create a system that is more inclusive, more responsive, and ultimately more effective.
One of my favorite themes from Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month was "Don't shit on me." Sometimes people who ask, or sometimes people who say they're supporting me, try to tell me what I should or shouldn't do. And that's not helpful. If you don't understand me, ask me. That's what real support looks like, not directing.
Excellent. Mahalo for the opportunity to share.
Sorry. Mahalo. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you both very much. Again, wonderful insight. I'm actually taking some things away from what we could be doing with our council in Virginia. So, thank you both for that for those wonderful insights. So, our next category of strategies is going to be around our operations work, what we do within operations. So, uh, again, staff prepare and councils govern. Effective councils rely on strong participation. Staff support includes agenda development with chair input. Background materials are developed in plain language, decision summaries, and follow-up tracking for decisions that are made in the process. Well-prepared meetings allow members to focus on leadership instead of logistics. We're allowed to focus on the decisions that we need to make rather than the nuts and bolts of everything, so to speak. Gender development did that. And so to talk about this aspect, I'd like to turn it over to our friends in Vermont to talk about how they navigate this strategy in their meeting or in their meetings.
So much, Matthew. Hi, everyone. Kirsten Murphy from the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council. So this is a phrase that I use a lot when I am planning any type of meeting that is going to rely on the input of leaders with lived experience, maybe people who aren't used to government systems. And that is, if you're not planning for inclusion, you're preparing for exclusion, right? If you're not planning for inclusion, you're setting the stage for exclusion. So much of what goes into making a council meeting successful happens long before we start the meeting, sometimes even weeks before. And I want to highlight in this short talk a certain type of planning. Yes, there are logistics, and that's really important for a smooth meeting. Yes, having accessible materials and multiple formats to support people's understanding is really important. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we build a bridge for each member to be part of that meeting. So next slide, please. This is just a quick level set. We all have some version of this. Our council happens to meet quarterly. Our meetings are about 5 hours of meeting time, and then there's an hour of lunch in there. That's about as long as anyone really can sustain good attention, I think. If you had told me pre-pandemic that we were going to commit to a hybrid format, I would have said no, that is never happening on my watch. And yet this is the world that we live in now. And as tiny as Vermont is, and I know that you all have met very long, even plane flights to get across some of your states. For us, the phrase we use, we stole it from Maine, is you can't get there from here. So if you live out on a mountain on a dirt road and your mom is older and isn't very excited about driving after dark, you may not be physically coming to that meeting because people just don't have the kind of transportation support that they used to have. So we struggle with this a lot. We use other members to give rides. We do all the things we can think of. And yet the imperfect solution is to use technology, and to usually about a third of our members are participating virtually through the OWL technology. And yet we have the same rules about how we include everyone, whether they are there virtually or they are there physically. And we cover all the things that the DD Act says we have to cover. Our folks have to pass a budget. Our folks set the stage for our legislative platform. They decide what's in the 5-year plan. They evaluate me, all of that important work. But let's face it, that is not why somebody joined the council. Somebody didn't get up in the morning and say, I want to join the DD council because I really want more say over their budget. Now my job is to help people see how budget is connected to the things they care about. But what they joined the council to do is to make a difference. So how do we tap into that motivation and still stay on either side of that electric fence between sort of council governs and staff implement? Next slide, please. So the mantra for planning meetings is meetings must be meaningful, action-oriented, and fun. And this allows me to introduce you to some of my council members, and I have their permission to talk about them. And here's what I want you to note, where I want you to notice how individualized some of the planning is. There on the left in the orange jacket is our member Justin Redhawk Denth. He is Abenaki, the people who lived in and tended Vermont land long before it was Vermont. And to participate, for the meeting to be meaningful, like he's understanding the meeting well, Justin needs a highly visual agenda. So we send an agenda that our executive committee has set 2 weeks in advance. There are picture icons for each item. It's in 14 to 16 point type. It's in plain language. It's very understandable. And yet, Justin needs a little bit more to pay attention to that agenda. And he's not the only one. So I've put on contract one of our former council members who's trained as a peer support provider. He's been trained through our statewide self-advocacy organization. And he makes a phone call or has a Zoom with each of several members to go over the agenda a couple of days before the meeting. Again, we're planning for full understanding. But Justin needs something more to really engage with our meetings. This is where we get into this old, it now sounds a really old-fashioned concept, but Justin has a socially validated role. So some of you will remember social role valorization, popularized by, I'll mispronounce his name, Wolfensberger, which is a hard one to say. And this is when a function or a role, right, within a group is esteemed, respected, and deemed meaningful, right? So Justin's whole personal story is about how discovering and learning all about his Native American heritage was a turning point in his life, and a turning point where his life moved into something much more positive. So Justin is kind of cradling this flute that he has, and he has learned. He's on his tribal council, and he has learned to play some music on this flute, and uses it in his cultural context to sort of signal it's time for us all to come together to meet. So when our chair, or co-chairs actually, say we are convening this meeting, we then turn to Justin, and his role in each meeting is to play the flute for just a short snippet of time. And that calls us together, a socially validated role that then lets Justin bridge to all the other things, like I'm going to have an opinion about the budget. Critically important. We have other things roles that we create within our meetings. So we typically assign someone as the jargon buster in a meeting. So that's a role where somebody puts their hand up as soon as a 50-cent word or some government speak acronym comes out of my mouth. And they say, whoa, what did you just mean? What is ACL? What are you talking about? And that jargon buster, also an important role in the meeting. We have lots of roles for people. So when we have committees reporting out, it's the committee chair that speaks. It's not the staff, right? So people have these socially validated roles. On the right there is gentleman Edward. Edward is just the most seasoned council member you can imagine. He was a member of the Maryland Council for many years, and then in retirement, he moved to Vermont, and he's now a member of the Vermont Council. And what Edward needs for his meetings to be meaningful for him, and for him to feel welcome, is he shared with me at orientation that he doesn't like he types to communicate, and he's uncomfortable having to sort of stop the whole meeting while people wait for Edward to type, although we're perfectly happy to do that. It's not his preference. So in advance of the meeting, I have some email back and forth with Edward, who likes to use email, and I give him the questions in advance that I think we're going to be talking about so he can preload some material into his communication device. That's the bridge that lets him have the meeting be more meaningful for him. And then the third example, and each of these was just completely randomly selected. I could have been literally any one of my members. That's Scarlett. She is one of our co-chairs. Scarlett's first language is German, and she much prefers spoken English over written English. She just finds that a lot easier to track. So for her and for a number of other members, I make a short video reviewing the agenda. So we send out a plain language agenda. We also make a video of me just explaining what's on the agenda, what you can expect in a meeting. Nobody likes surprises, right? We want to know what's going to happen. So that helps Scarlett. And in addition, she shared with me at orientation that she has a particular, it's called an agnosia. So when she sees a face, it's hard for her to connect the name with it. And she finds that hard as a chair because she wants to call people by their name. So we just created simple table tents that have in really large print everyone's name so she can see it as if they were on a screen with a name beneath them. It's just that they're in the room, right? So that's the kind of level of support that we really try to plan for. Next slide, please. So meetings are meaningful, action-oriented, and fun. I've talked some about the meaningful piece. The meeting has to be understandable, and then it also has to give members an opportunity to connect to their truth and what's important to them. It's meaningful to them. Action-oriented. We try hard to give people an opportunity in the context of a meeting to do some real-time advocacy. So that doesn't take up all of the meeting, but we do try to use our lunchtime to bring lawmakers in, and we structure that lunch so people are sharing their lived experience with the legislators who are sharing lunch with us. We sometimes bring in other decision makers from the executive branch, and members kind of have a preset way of, again, sharing their lived experience. So that's part of how we try to make sure that everyone is getting some action out of being at our meeting. And everybody takes away at least one to-do item. That could be going to a subcommittee meeting. It could be following up with our policy analysts to get to the State House. Whatever it is, we try to make sure that people have small or large action items. It could be taking a break at lunch and having everybody write some thank you cards, just personalizing one or two thank you cards to lawmakers who made a difference in that session. Thank you for passing that housing bill. My son really needs that opportunity. Third and final, fun. So this is the hard one for me because, as my children will tell you, I'm not a very fun person. But fortunately, I have a very creative staff that help me think about what fun means in a context of these types of meetings. It's not a free-for-all because we're doing serious business and talking about serious issues. What fun in this context means to me is giving people an opportunity to use other parts of their brain, right? To engage in a different way with their body or their artistic sense or something that allows everyone sort of that opportunity to have a different experience in the meeting. So that could be using mixed media and drawing, as you can see here, people's ideas on a big white paper. It could be the thank you letter thing that I talked about. How do you make talking about the budget fun? This was the hardest one for me. I mean, everyone would fall asleep when I first started talking about the budget. Now what I do is I make play money. I'm not making this up. I mean, I have slides. I have the numbers for people. It's all sitting right there, full transparency. But I also use play money. And so I count out, okay, so look at this. I have this stack of money. And we're minimum contribution, $526,000. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, and a whole bunch more bills. We just hired our staff. Look what I have left. I only have these two little, I only have a tiny amount of money left. Oh my God, I got to pay rent. I got to do this. I got to do that. That's an avenue into having a meaningful conversation with people about okay, we have to have a different plan because we can't spend out all our money on one thing if we're going to do the other things that are important to all of us here. So, last thing, we try to build in some ceremony from time to time. So, at our 5-year meeting retreat, we started with the theme we all hold a piece of the puzzle and we need each other's pieces to see the whole picture. And over that weekend retreat, people drew their vision of how their life would be a little bit different, how Vermonters with IDD would have different lives in 5 years if the council was successful. And it didn't matter the quality of the drawing. But then we created a kind of closing activity where people each brought up their puzzle piece. And these were big cardboard puzzle pieces, right? And they explained what they had drawn, and then they put it in what was emerging as the big picture. Sometimes that ceremony is another bridge and a fun one to bring people into the meeting of the whole. There are 2 more slides that I'm not going to talk about because they were kind of placeholders. And I just really thank everyone for their attention, and I'm happy to answer questions in the chat.
Kirsten, thank you so much. I love all of those ideas and like, wow, what creativity to make a meeting fun. I know we all don't like all day meetings sometimes, but definitely spicing it up in that way is wonderful. Um, Additional support ideas that we may have, right? As you said, Kirsten, like video agendas. And Amy, do you mind going to the next slide? Because I think these were the last two. There you go. Perfect. So having videos and other things, right? Multimodalities of how we can do things. And so as we kind of go to our next best practice, we want to remember that chairs lead meetings and staff support flow. So a chair facilitates the discussion, ensures participation, and guides decision making. So a lot of what I am sort of representing here today, right? I guess you could sort of say I am serving as the chair of this panel and sort of passing it on to different speakers to talk about different aspects. A staff can provide technical clarification on issues. Again, some of that jargon that Kirsten talked about. They can track action items and they maintain records. Staff could not dominate discussion as we're going throughout our agenda items unless they are asked to provide sort of expertise in their given area. So to talk about this idea in more detail, I'd love to turn it over to Jeremy from Michigan to talk about how this kind of shows up for him in his work in Michigan. So Jeremy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Matthew. What I want to talk about is the actual meeting itself and trying to get the flow going and how to be prepared for the meeting. So next slide, if you could, please. There's a lot of words on here and a lot of things to look back on. I'm going to try to summarize it up and give some examples. So the best thing that I can say about keeping a meeting in order and on track and on time and getting participation from the meeting is being prepared. Be prepared before the meeting. For us, that means our executive committee and our executive director meet the month before to develop the agenda for the meeting so that we're prepared for the meeting and we know what's going to be on it. Understand what the presentations are, know how long you assume they're going to take, but then build in time so that you can have questions on it. Increase the participation and member engagement. If your council takes a lot of time for questions, and plan more. If there's good discussion, plan more time. Look ahead at that agenda and kind of be prepared on some fluff things that may be in it that if you're having great discussion, you may be able to move that to the next meeting or rearrange your agenda as you're in it to keep on track and keep that discussion going. Be aware of the repeat trap I put in there, and that is when a discussion seems to be cyclical in nature, right? We've talked about this part and then it comes back to the same points again and it keeps going back to that same point. At that point, you want to make sure that you're kind of trying to redirect and saying, hey, we've talked about this. Let's get some further discussion, or is there other things we want to talk about instead of being caught in that cycle and then eating up all the time in your meeting for that. Understanding the timing and flow of the presentations, it helps because the more you're in it and the more you understand it, the less likely the staff are to step in and try to assist and do those things. So it helps you maintain that control level and keep the council active in it. Do your best to start on time and stay on time, but know that participation and questions are a gift. So if it's good discussion that's making you go over, don't fear that. If it's people asking great questions and digging into a topic, that's where you look for those fluff things that maybe you can move to after lunch, or maybe they don't need to be in the meeting. So being prepared is key to this, knowing where you're at in the agenda and what the agenda is going to be. In the next slide, and I should say on that, the more prepared you are, the better you can present, the more comfortable you'll be. No one is a great presenter the first time out. No one is a great leader of the meetings and the structure of the meetings the first time out. Don't be afraid of that. The more you do it, the more comfortable you become, and the more you build your confidence in leading those meetings and doing those things, and it'll just flow better. So don't get down on yourself if your first meeting doesn't go that well. It will get better, and the more you plan, the better it can go. Items that you can do before the meeting: prepare some questions. If you know what the discussion is going to be and the topic's going to be, prepare some questions in advance, because a lot of times people don't want to be the first person to ask the question. So if you have a question prepared that you can throw out there and suggest a question, that typically will be the icebreaker that'll help people ask other questions as they're thinking about those, and know that it's okay to ask questions and do those kind of things. That's before the meeting, right? Before it comes up. The day of the meeting, if you're there a little early, have some talks with the rest of the council members prior to the meeting. Suggest to them, hey, what do you think of this topic? What's going on with this topic? Do you have questions on that? Don't be afraid to ask those questions when we're doing this. I didn't think of that. Maybe you can come up with this, and feel free to do so. Engage your members so that they want to ask questions at that point and be part of the discussion. Again, discussion and questions are a gift. The more participation you can get, the better your council will function. Be sure that when you're doing this, you're not putting one of your council members on the spotlight if you haven't talked to them about it beforehand. There's nothing worse than having, an out of the blue question from a chair to someone else in the council to say, oh, what do you think about this? And then you're putting them under the spotlight in the meeting, and maybe they're not comfortable with doing so. So again, have that discussion beforehand. If it's something you've agreed to, feel free. Otherwise, let them participate and let them be comfortable in that participation cycle. At the end of the discussion, always be sure to thank your members for good discussion. And again, participation is a gift. There were times that we struggled with participation, and we're getting to a better place now where people feel free to share their stories and to talk with the people we're having the presentations from about what their specific concerns are, because that's why we're on the council. We're there to talk about our concerns and our unique scenarios that we're going to make sure we're sharing those things. On to the next tab, if you could. Discussion to decision, guides to decision making. Mark on your agenda. So when we develop our agenda, we have marks and placeholders and little check marks and boxes on the agenda, the physical agenda itself, which tells us, is this an item that needs a vote? Is this a discussion item and a presentation that's about questions and answers? What is the goal of that topic on the agenda? So that we know ahead of time, what do we have to ask? What's our goal of that agenda item? Have a summary of the action that is being considered. At the end of the presentation, try to summarize in your thank you to the presenters, right? Thank you for talking about X, Y, Z. Thank you for talking about this new Medicaid plan that's coming out. We feel it was a great discussion, and we probably will have questions. Please, can we send those to you and get answers later if they come up? Presenters like to have that, where maybe they're not as in the know on the questions, they can come back and support those questions later. Know above this and say, if there's an action item on the agenda, say, as the chair, you can state, hey, the staff is seeking the motion for support to start this program. This is the action we're looking for. And then go into the discussion on it. When it comes back around, it is very okay to say, at this point, I would entertain a motion to support the staff in doing this. You want to make sure you're always doing positive motions, not negative motions. So even if it gets voted down, the motion itself is a positive motion. Then coming around, and if it's a motion from the group, you want to, as the chair, say, just clarify the motion and state it again. We have a motion from Amy that said, we are going to support this program and let the staff start it. Do we have a second for that? Clarifying those things and making sure you're checking all the boxes and the formalities of things that you have to do as a chair of a council to make sure those actions are noted and things like that. It's all the non-fun stuff, right? We talked about fun in the last one, but there's some requirements that kind of have to be done that we have to make sure they're doing. Be prepared so that you know what the action and the flow is, and make sure you get that in before a break or otherwise, so that you don't lose the traction you've got from the discussion. In my final slide, sorry, it's dry stuff. That's what I got tasked with, but be prepared for the meeting is key, right? Know the agenda, know the flow, know the timing of it. If you're having problems with getting consensus, being able to drive that back and know what you need an action on. This is all a learning process, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to be and the more confident you'll be. It just is the way it works for you, and the more you do it, the more confident you're going to be and know who's going to ask the questions and who can you count on to be participating and do those things. Have discussion with staff prior to the meeting so that you're sure you know the agenda, the flow, and the expectations. And it also assures to the staff that you know the agenda so that they don't feel the need to step in and help you with those things, maybe unnecessarily. Having discussions with other members to make sure they're active and having good conversations and they know they're welcome to join in and have those discussions. And a good team meeting is a team event. It takes a lot of work to make those successful, and it takes everybody in the group to make them so. You're kind of the captain of the ship, but it's all the work from everybody else that gets you to the end. So thanks. I try to keep that a little brief and get us on time here. So if you have any questions for me, please add them to the chat, and we can discuss afterwards.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I must say, nothing is too boring. All of the pieces about a meeting come together and are very important. So thank you for saying that. As we go into our final best practice of this category, we want to make sure that we support informed leadership. Staff should strengthen council leadership by training and technical information, so providing additional trainings to the members, explaining federal and state requirements. I know I certainly don't know all the nuts and bolts of federal and state requirements, so having staff there to help with that is very important. Identifying risks early, right? So as we're going through a process, if we know that there might be some risks involved, talking through those, bringing those up so that the council as a whole understands them, and then offering implementation realities, right? So what is it going to look like if we go to implement what we're trying to do within our council? Good staff support empowers but does not replace member leadership, right? So again, this is something that we brought up a number of times, and the other speakers have brought up a number of times, that the staff is there to support. They're not there to impose their desires or their what they want as the outcomes to be. That is done by council members and staff is there to offer support. Um, uh, our next category of how we do our work. So the broad category of how we do our work. The first best practice is to use partnership and not the hierarchy strategy. Um, we want to make sure that our councils are not adversarial. So adversarial means that you may be um, butting heads with someone or doing things for people instead of with them. Our friends in Hawaii talked a lot about doing things together and doing things with people. And I think that that is very important as it relates to all of our work in any of our states. Again, not adversarial, but working as a team and as a unit to make the meetings run smoothly. Strong governance practices are things that look like mutual respect among staff and members. Shared problem solving. So if a problem arises, we're able to work together to come up with a solution. Transparency, so that there is clear delineation and direction on what's going on, and then early communication. We've heard from many of our groups today talking about getting information out early to council members and having those dialogues prior to the meeting if need be, depending on an accommodation need or things of that nature. I want to think that leadership partnership is a direct role. So again, they're working together. The staff and the members are working together to make make the meetings run as smooth as possible. Another next slide, please, Amy. We can so to go into them in a little bit more detail. So we build member confidence, right? So staff provides different trainings and orientation outcomes so that when people are coming on to a council, they are level set in a way that they feel comfortable when they're going into their first meeting. They offer peer mentorship. I know that we have done that in our Virginia council, where we pair a seasoned member with a new member for the first handful of meetings so that they understand how the flow goes, and things of that nature. Encouraging questions, that's been brought up in a number of our conversations today, right? Questions are what drive the conversation. And creating accessible materials. We want to make sure that everyone has access in the way that works for them to the materials that are going to occur in the meeting. Next slide. As we kind of go into how this best practice can be implemented, I'm going to turn it over to our friends in New York State to talk about how they have put some of these things into practice in their meetings. So Dave, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Matthew, and good afternoon, everyone. The question we want to answer in this session is, how can we design a council leadership culture that builds confidence as well as improves competence in self-advocates? It's critical to recognize that self-advocates join our councils looking for leadership growth they can take back to their communities. They're already excited because their state and governor chose them. If you ask self-advocates, they will tell you that their council role is one of the most important experiences in their lives. For some, the most important. That said, I don't believe we need a special time for leadership training. It's okay if you have the time, but it's not necessary. Self-advocates learn advocacy as we do our council work together. I suggest that we give self-advocates leadership growth opportunities that increase their competence and build their confidence. I propose this happens naturally in a council-led culture of care. Let me illustrate how our councils can connect with advocacy organizations and agencies with leadership development as part of that structure. Slide, please. Councils will ideally have an advocacy framework that they fit into. Part of ours is the Self-Advocacy Association of New York State, efficiently known as SANIS. SANIS serves as an on-ramp for statewide council member self-advocacy. Our council has a 5-year award with SANIS, the largest self-advocacy organization in New York State that is intentionally led by people with disabilities for people with developmental disabilities. Slide, please. Meet Katrina Hazel, our council vice chair. Katrina identifies as a self-advocate with a diagnosis of IDD. Having heard about the advocacy training offered by our council, Katrina wanted to join the council to become an advocacy leader. She heard that self-advocates and their family members enjoy working together doing council initiatives in a culture of care. Katrina's story of her member experience illustrates our training plan. Slide, please. At the end of our process, this is Katrina and I getting ready to lead a full council meeting like we will in June. Leadership training is not a course or curriculum, but rather hands-on real council leadership experience. Katrina's council work then deepens into advocacy and policymaking. In her busyness with council work, time flies by as she gains council advocacy experience. Katrina now looks for new advocacy opportunities, even creates them on her own. But having developed deep connections through council work, Katrina continues to enjoy the relationships that began during her time with the council. She is a competent leader who has self-confidence from her time serving on the council in a culture of care. Today, as an active council leader, she engages her community advocating for people with IDD like herself. Slide, please. So, what are confidence and competence? The word confidence simply means self-trust. You cannot make someone confident or trust in themselves. You can only help them build confidence by creating the conditions for them to grow. They already want to grow into contributors. What is more, our self-advocates should not feel like spectators watching our councils being led by others. They must feel like leaders and not just in title only. In addition to accessibility and inclusion, we must offer them autonomy. Slide, please. What is it, autonomy? We kick that word around. Autonomy simply means self-direction, which is easier for us to remember. It plays a critical role for without focusing on self-advocates' desire that Beth Mount calls longings, our services are limited to what we think is best for them. Autonomy is the critical prerequisite that ensures we stay on track. Autonomy needs to be experienced by self-advocates, but witnessed by the community to contribute. How does autonomy relate to accessibility and inclusion? Accessibility, inclusion, and autonomy are interconnected pillars for empowering individuals with disabilities. They ensure self-advocates have the tools, environment, and rights to live independently and participate fully in their community. While accessibility provides the necessary infrastructure and inclusion fosters belonging, autonomy grants the freedom to make personal choices. That's a paraphrase of AI Claude. We must ensure that all opportunities and options are visible, available, and accessible from which they can choose to build their best life their way. But how do gifts and dreams fit into this proposal? Slide, please. Yes, confidence is built through autonomy. Autonomy is enhanced by gifts such as abilities, talents, or just interests that people with IDD have, as well as the dreams for which they must attain those gifts. Crucially, a gift is a gift in the heart of the giver with IDD, not the recipient. A dream is a longing for being part of the community. It is the DNA of the soul. As council members, their reach must always exceed their grasp. For example, meet Xavier Skeeter, a self-advocate and member of our council. Slide, please. We'll know that our work is building confidence in our self-advocates when our not only starts in our councils, our council cultures, but also spreads beyond to our communities. After several years of leading council committee meetings and with supportive staff, here is Xavier leading a council meeting with Anna supporting. Anna, also a self-advocate, is a passionate trainer. Yes, people with an IDD diagnosis should train others with an IDD diagnosis. Who better? Slide, please. In our council plan, self-advocates lead with staff support. Staff are the unsung heroes of our leadership training and our community outreach engagement. They do this through one-on-one coaching and prepping for meetings led by self-advocates. They do appropriate leadership training for specific meeting occasions. Staff ensure that they do not set self-advocates up for failure due to being unprepared. Slide, please. As part of Xavier's confidence and competence building, Anna assists him with talking points first through a prep session. Slide, please. Staff also help Xavier with the chair's corner in our agency website. When Xavier onboarded in our council, he shared openly that it was his dream to speak at his church, but it didn't happen for a while. After several years of leading council committee meetings and with support of staff, Xavier was invited to speak at his church recently. This was a dream come true for Xavier to reach out to his community. Not surprisingly, he recently was invited to join the Arc Rensselaer Board, a flagship in our area. We would suggest that this is intentional confidence, not coincidence. Slide, please. Here, Xavier holds a copy of the declaration our governor recently made commemorating Disability Awareness Month, in which he played a council member role. Some of you are celebrating that as well, I've heard today. Slide, please. Let's return to SANIS, our statewide self-advocacy training for and by self-advocates. Mike Rogers, regional director, recently taught me his top 3 priorities for offering leadership training to self-advocates, of which he is one. First, give them space in the form of leadership opportunities, roles, and titles. Some refer to this as placement. Beth Mount said, find a place for them that needs their gift. Often this is an ingredient lacking in our training. We must offer our self-advocates placement, or as Katie Sjogren said in her presidential address to the AAIDD, it's all about creating spaces and amplifying voices. We must first see their autonomy, ask good questions, and listen with care. Second, support them well. Feed their gifts of all types and their dreams of longing for a good life by asking them questions and offering them encouragement. Design training around the person. That's so important. No 2 training experiences should look alike. Slide, please. Third, and perhaps the most important because it's the end game, build up the self-advocate in confidence and competence with autonomy to be a part of the community. What happens when you make community outreach part of your council training? Last week, Katie Clark Wheeler reminded us that social connection is the beating heart of ACL. Related, Sarah Newell Perez underscored that DD councils are the conveners to which we might add for the community. We must facilitate community connection for self-advocates as part of their training. Slide, please. The SANIS motto captures it well. People with developmental disabilities sticking up for ourselves and others. In conclusion, as with Xavier, the community will follow in confidence building for our council members if we intentionally create space for them. It must start with us. But how will we change community hearts? Paul Hearn, founding member and president of the National Council of Disabilities at the signing of ADA, said it well. At the reception following the signing, he offered a toast, stating that in ADA we now have the protection of compliance, but it will require changing community hearts. Leadership competence and confidence in a context of full autonomy with gifts and dreams will reach the community. It's already working, but we have a long way to go to change the hearts of each new generation. So, to quote Paul Hearn once again, 36 years later, here's to change hearts. Slide. Thank you for your attention. Back to you, Matthew.
Thank you,
One
Dave.
more slide. I'm sorry, one more
Oh,
slide.
go ahead, please.
Yes, please. Thank you very much. One more slide. If I can encourage any of you in developing training programs in your councils, I'd love to have the opportunity. And there's my information. Thank you very much. Sorry, Matthew. Excuse me.
All good, Dave. Thank you so much. I don't know how I'm going to be able to follow that up. I think everything you said is is the key, right? And connecting with hearts and minds is the way to go. But as we move forward, our next best practice in this section is that accountability works both ways. Councils hold staff accountable for results. Staff hold councils accountable to law, policy, and timelines. Effective governance happens when when councils embrace a wide range of perspectives and thoughtful debate, as we've talked about, as we've heard from a number of our speakers. Governance is most effective when there is open and respectful disagreement. The best governance also happens when ideas are tested, not just agreed upon, right? So again, if there is pushback, there is debate about all of these things, is what makes the ideas that come out of our meetings the most strong and effective that they can be. Our final best practice, next slide, please, is practice the no surprises rule. Best partnerships, operate with early notice of challenges. Again, we've talked about being early on giving people information quite a lot today. Shared planning, so that there is planning between executive director and chair, or committee chairs, whatever the case may be, and continuous communication. We want to make sure that there is a constant open line of dialogue going both ways between council members and staff and council members. Because we want to make sure that, and we want to avoid surprises, because surprises erode trust, and trust grows information and allows that information to flow openly, right? Which is ultimately where we are going to be most successful as councils. As we summarize all of, next slide, please. As we summarize all of, and we'll do this check here in just a second, as we summarize the key takeaways, again, we want to remember that council leadership drives direction, staff expertise enables success, clear roles strengthen trust, preparation supports informed decisions, and partnership, not hierarchy, creates effective governance. And if you want to reflect on your council and whether you are achieving the goals that we've talked about in today's wonderful presentation, you can ask yourself these questions. Who has set this priority? Who has made the decision? Who is responsible for implementation, and are roles being respected? If the answer to these questions are clear, your governance and your council is working effectively. So, and if they're not, that then gives you guidance on work that you need to do as a council to reach that goal. As we have about 10 minutes left, I do want to open it up, and I don't know if there was anything that you wanted to do, but I do want to open it up to any questions. But I also want to thank all of the presenters in today's presentation. I think the information on all fronts was very, very powerful and has certainly given me a lot to think about. So, Amy, I don't know if I want to turn it over to you to handle the Q&A, but if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat or come off mute and share your thoughts.
And while we're waiting for people to ask questions, I'm going to launch the poll, and we would appreciate it if you would help us out and complete that.
I'm seeing comments in the chat coming in with wonderful praise for all of our presenters, so thank you very much. I need to finish my poll. Hold on one second. Come on. There we go. Perfect. Let's see if any questions have popped up in the chat. Let's check it out. Seeing just a lot of comments for thank you for sharing all the information. Does any presenters have any thoughts that they haven't been able to share that we have a couple minutes to share? If not, that's okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot at all. Let's see. We have a comment from Cheryl. Hey, Cheryl. We have supplemental resource that is a self-assessment to see if your council is council-led. So by all means, feel free to complete that assessment. I do have a question in here for Kirsten. Let's see. Can you talk about the Open Meetings Act and your peer mentor meeting with self-advocates in preparation of meetings?
Yeah, it's a one-on-one meeting, so it's not like a group chat. And it's really just about checking for understanding about the agenda, and it's not meant to direct any decision making on the part of the member. And then sometimes my peer advocate, peer mentor attends the meeting again to provide support. And I have to be like, the whole way we decided if this gentleman was the right hire was his clarity around he is not there to participate in the decision making of the council because he is now staff as a contractor. So we have to be, remind him of that fairly, regularly. And so he's there to really just, again, check for understanding and increase the comfort level of several of our members who are all happen to be young men and feel a little bit like more at ease, sort of saying, well, wait, David, I didn't get that. Can you explain that to me one more time? And so I don't believe that violates Vermont public meeting law at all. And we do always have public comment in our meetings. If David felt he had a burning desire to say something, our contractor, he could do that at public comment. But I don't believe we're running afoul of any public meeting practices.
And then, Kirsten, there is a follow-up based on that comment. Do you post these meetings with self-advocates and allow public?
So again, I use my contractor as just a one-on-one prep meeting over the phone. It's not a separate meeting. So we would have to if it was a subcommittee meeting or something like that, but that's not how we manage it.
And isn't it also a situation where if it's two people, it's not considered a meeting, right? If it's more than two people, then it is considered or can be considered a meeting. So I would think because it's one-on-one, as you've said, Kirsten, you're not sort of violating that because it's just two people.
I'm less clear about the two people rule, but I'm pretty clear that it's really just about an accommodation for checking for understanding of the materials that we've handed out in advance of the meeting.
Got it. Perfect. Let me just see if there anything else. That's right. You should be one-on-one, my bad. Nope, all just thank yous and everything else. Does anyone else on the panel have any kind of closing thoughts that they'd like to share?
Thanks for the opportunity.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Wonderful information.